Hey guys, Brock Layden here, and I wanted to make a video this week about how I dealt with stress when I was a graduate in one of the big four firms. And the reason I wanted to make it is that I've been thinking a bit lately, just I think I dealt with stress better when I was a grad than what I do now. And I don't think it's only because my job is more stressful now. I think as you go up the hierarchy, your job becomes more stressful, but also your ability to deal with that stress increases as well. And stress is relative. One of the things that I think it's easy to forget, because you can be, a manager or a director or something, and it's quite easy to forget the fact that, and you look at the role that a graduate does and kind of think, oh, how could you possibly be stressed about that? But you forget that, when you were in that graduate's shoes, it was stressful because everything is relative, right? And so as you work your way up the hierarchy, you get used to handling stress and you get better ways of dealing with it and that sort of thing. But I genuinely think that I was better at dealing with stress when I was a graduate than what I am now. Something that happens slowly over time. And I can't remember exactly what made me think about it recently, but I just caught myself reflecting on the fact that I reckon I dealt with it better than what I do now. So this video is as much for me as it is for anybody else who might get value out of it. So I wanted to kind of retrace my steps in terms of why is it that I think I handled it better as a grad. I think a big part of the reason is I was reading so much at the time, consuming so much content, and when I say content, primarily I'm talking about books, which I suppose taught me lessons about dealing with stress, either directly or indirectly. And I think these three books in particular, I was literally just looking at my bookshelf today, trying to think, what was I reading at the time when I was a grad? And these were three of the books that I was reading. So Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, and The Breakthrough Experience by Dr. John Demartini. And I want to kind of speed run these and just quickly talk about what I think I was doing as a grad, so that, if you're a grad or whoever you are, and again, making this as much for myself as a reminder, what are some of the things that you can do to deal with stress better. First thing that I got from this book, if you haven't seen this book before, so Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, it's essentially his diary entry. Marcus Aurelius was Roman emperor about 2,000 years ago, and the book is essentially his diary entries, and it was never written to be released. It was literally just writing to himself. But today we get access to this, and we can see what it is that he was thinking about. And he was a Stoic philosopher as much as an emperor. So there's a lot of Stoic philosophy in here. Anyway, one of the things that I really took from the book is this idea of stress being external to us. And I'll read a quick passage. Now, again, as I'm reading this, remember, this is Marcus Aurelius writing this in his notebook to himself, more or less. And he said, "Here are two of the most immediately useful thoughts you will dip into. First, that things cannot touch the mind. They are external and inert. Anxieties can only come from your internal judgment. Second, that all these things you see will change almost as you look at them, and then will be no more. Constantly bring to mind all that you yourself have already seen change. The universe is change. Life is judgment." So I love, there's essentially two messages in what Marcus Aurelius is saying here. The first is that things cannot touch the mind. This is what I mentioned before. I really tried to, I was thinking about a lot as a grad, that when I was going into a stressful meeting, or like a meeting that I knew was going to be stressful, or I had to have an uncomfortable conversation where, couldn't deliver to a client what I thought I was going to be able to deliver for, whatever reason, that uncomfortable conversation is an external thing. It wasn't in me, and it didn't have direct control over how I was going to feel. One thing that Marcus Aurelius often wrote about was the fact that, like, external events don't hurt us. It's our judgment of those external events that hurts us. And so that was one thing I was always thinking about as a grad. Like, no matter what uncomfortable situation I'm going into, it does not directly have the power to change how I feel. It's only the way that I judge that event. And just that simple reframe of it's external, it's not in me, it's external, and the only way it gets in is through my judgment, was something that I found like really useful and powerful as a grad, and something that I haven't been thinking about enough recently, I think. And the second part of what Marcus Aurelius wrote about there was see that all these things you see will change almost as you look at them, and then will be no more. Constantly bring to mind all that you yourself have already seen changed. Now, the reason I love that is that, like, so often things happen to us, like stressful events happen, or, you know, things that we label as unfortunate or bad. And then years down the track, or, you know, maybe decades down the track, we look back on those events and we can see the ways in which they benefited us. Perhaps they turned our life in a certain direction, which was actually positive. Perhaps we learnt some things that ultimately benefited us more than, you know, the event itself actually hurt us. And I guess I love the fact that Marcus Aurelius is calling that out, that things are constantly changing. But then what he says there about bring to mind all the other things that you have seen in your life which have changed. And I think it's really powerful, because I think everybody can look back in their own life and see or remember events or circumstances which at the time we labeled as, you know, painful, traumatic, whatever word you want to use, just hard and difficult. But then you look back on them and you realize that they actually gave you a lot, which perhaps you didn't see at the time because you were too busy living it, but down the track you can see it. But just having the awareness that, hey, so often I go through things and I think they suck, and then I look back on them and I realize that they actually gave me a lot. Just that realization, I think, really helped me as a grad when I was going into, you know, again, tough meetings, tough situations, or stressful periods, where in the moment I was like, this kind of sucks. But then also trying to think about, well, you know what, this could be exactly what I look back on in years to come and be something that I'm very grateful for. And lo and behold, that is what happened, right? I look back on those tough times that I had as a graduate and the tough experiences that I had. And again, I use tough here as a relative term, right? Like for me at the time, they felt tough. And I am really grateful for them. And the main reason I'm grateful for them is, well, it all comes down to how do you perceive a challenge, or how do you perceive whether something is negative, right? And these two books, the second two, taught me a lot about perception of challenges. This first book, The Obstacle is the Way, written by Ryan Holiday. The name of the book, The Obstacle is the Way, actually comes from a Marcus Aurelius quote. And the book is essentially all about, you can see the subtitle there, The Timeless Art of Turning Trials into Triumph. It's essentially a collection of stories of times where, like, things went wrong, but it actually turned out to be extremely beneficial. That's probably the TLDR on that book. And this book, The Breakthrough Experience by Dr. John Demartini, taught me a lot about how I perceive events in the world around me as well. If I had to sum up one of the biggest lessons I took from that book, one of Dr. John Demartini's, I suppose, key beliefs, let's say, is that when we perceive an event to be negative, it's because we obviously perceive more drawbacks than benefits. We see more negative than positive, but that is only a result of a misguided perception, and that there are just as many positives as there are negatives, but sometimes you have to go and you have to look for them. And so when I combine those two things, and again, I was reading these when I was a graduate, they kind of helped bring to me a picture of the obstacle is the way. Like, all right, these tough experiences that I'm having could actually down the line be very beneficial for me. And with the breakthrough experience, kind of, why am I labeling these things negative? Are they actually negative? And to bring it really specific to consulting and like precisely what it meant for me, when you're a graduate, the way I thought about it was this: like, if I was on a really easy project doing an easy role, then any grad could have stepped in and done that role. And there would be nothing special about that. But when you put yourself, or you get put into a position where you're on a difficult engagement, or you're filling a difficult role, you're stepping up, trying to take responsibility, the harder your role is, the fewer number of other graduates that could do that role. And imagine that if a role is this hard, like right up the top, people are going to have certain capabilities that they can rise to. Some grads might be able to handle a role that is this hard. Others can handle a role that is this hard. And you might be able to handle a role that's that hard. And the only way that that comes to daylight, that people see that, is when the role itself is this hard. Because if the role is just down here, then everybody can meet that. You're not special by doing that role. But when you get put into hard situations, that is when you get to differentiate yourself, because you perform a role like this, which every other grad can't reach, or majority of other grads can't reach, and they don't want to put themselves in that situation. So in my mind, I had basically reframed, again, tough meetings, tough deadlines, tough conversations as my opportunity to differentiate myself. I basically wanted, like, when you're in the moment, you don't like uncomfortable stuff, but you can kind of intellectualize it and think about it and reframe it in your own mind. And the way that I reframed it was, every hard situation that comes to me as a grad, the harder it is, the better, because that is how I'm going to differentiate myself as a grad. If I've just got easy stuff coming to me all day, then there's nothing special about what I'm doing. But if there's really hard shit coming my way, then that is what is actually going to kind of turn... that's what people are going to notice, right? And so it was just a reframe in my mind. And it was basically something that I tried to pride myself on. Like, I remember literally thinking at the time that like when I was a grad, I thought about what it was that I wanted to be promoted for. Like, what did I want it to be about me that would get me promoted? Like, not just for that promotion, but kind of what would make me successful, right? Just in my broader career. And it could be anything, right? For some people, it's their work ethic. Like, they might have a relentless work ethic where they just know they're going to outwork everybody else and you won't be able to compete with them. It could be a whole number of other things. For me, there were probably two main things. I wanted to pride myself on just my quality of work, like being able to do more in less time and doing it to a higher quality. And then the second thing, being able to handle stress better than anybody else. Now, could I actually handle stress better than everyone else? Like, no. Or how could you even possibly know that? But like, that was what I was working towards, right? That's what I was thinking about, trying to do that. There's one other passage from Marcus Aurelius that I wanted to read. Because, again, these are all the things that I was reading when I was a graduate, right? So this is what was swirling in my head, and I think I need to go back and read some more of this again, because I have kind of lost this way of thinking. When you read the same message enough and you think it enough, it becomes a habit. It's just where your mind goes, and I think that's what I've lost. I haven't been reading this sort of stuff enough. I haven't been thinking about it enough. So my default response to challenges has been, oh shit, this sucks. Why has this happened to me? Versus, okay, great, another opportunity to differentiate myself, which is what I was thinking when I was a grad. Anyway, here's, again, Marcus Aurelius writing to himself. It is my bad luck that this has happened to me. No, you should rather say, it is my good luck that, although this has happened to me, I can bear it without pain, neither crushed by the present nor fearful of the future. Because such a thing could have happened to any man, but not every man could have borne it without pain. So why see more misfortune in the event than good fortune in your ability to bear it? And again, there's another way I thought about it. Like, no, I don't need to sit there and feel sorry for myself that X, Y, Z has happened. I can just as equally look at the fact that how great is it that I can handle X, Y, Z. I have the opportunity to handle X, Y, Z. I have the opportunity to differentiate myself because not everybody else could handle X, Y, Z. So I just wanted to record those thoughts because, again, I've said this multiple times, but I think it's a good reminder for myself. The best ways that I handled stress as a grad was just actually recognizing that it was external to me, It's not in my head. It can't directly control me. Only when I give it the power to can these outside things affect me. But also seeing the benefits that those challenges bring, actually challenging my perception of why do I see more negative than positive. Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, one of his quotes, I can't remember the exact wording, but he basically said that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent opportunity. And that was essentially everything that I was thinking as a grad. Whenever I saw something more negative than positive, I was trying to find the positives that I wasn't seeing. On the inverse as well, whenever I saw something overly positive, I was trying to find out what were the hidden negatives that I was missing. And look, that's probably I could do a whole nother video on that. But yeah, I wanted to focus this one just around handling stress, because I feel like I can't really remember, but I can imagine it being uncomfortable as a grad wanting to talk to somebody more senior about being stressed, because you're thinking, oh, if I talk to this manager about being stressed, they're just going to laugh at me because their job is more stressful than mine. And like, that's just human nature, I feel. It's so easy to forget, right? Like, I forget what it was like when I was a grad, and the things which I was stressed about at the time now, I could quite easily turn my nose up and be like, why are you worried about that? But it really is true that just as you get more experience, you become more senior, you get better at managing and dealing with stress. But, just because you're a grad doesn't mean you're not allowed to be stressed. You absolutely can be stressed, because it is relative. And again, as you get more experience, you will get better at dealing with that stress. But, it doesn't invalidate the fact that it can be challenging sometimes, even if people above you don't think it's challenging, or they might, laugh or turn their nose up at the fact that, you're having a tough time with, whatever seemingly easy thing it is. So I wanted to share a few things that I found useful as a grad, and, hopefully they can maybe, spark a few thoughts for you. I'd highly recommend those 3 books. So Marcus Aurelius, great book, just fascinating, getting inside the mind of a former Roman emperor. The Obstacle is the Way, again, inspired by Marcus Aurelius, but it's not only focused on him. There's a lot of other good stories in there. And The Breakthrough Experience, Dr. John Demartini, all about challenging the way that you perceive things and, how you see the world around you. Love, if you have any thoughts, love to, have you check them in the comments. Always appreciate the feedback. And if you want to, again, get more of this content, you can sign up. There'll be a link in the description for the 8-week consulting challenge. We've got over 100 people that are part of it now, which is like awesome to see. I love the conversations that I've been having with grads, after they've signed up, and just seeing people around and getting emails and that sort of thing. So highly encourage you to jump onto that if it's something that you're interested in. But otherwise, I will see you next week.